Ever catch yourself just like really listening to that voice in your head? You know the one. It never shuts up. Like it's constantly narrating your life, judging what you're doing, planning what to do next. It's easy to think that's the real you, right? The one in control. But what if it isn't? What if all those thoughts are just like echoes coming from somewhere deeper inside?
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. It gets right to the heart of it. What is this inner voice anyway? And how does it connect to who we really are? I mean, we just assume it's us calling the shots.
Right. And that's where Carl Jung comes in. He spent his whole life trying to figure out how the mind works. And he came up with some really interesting ideas about this, about that voice in our head and the feeling that it is us. He basically said, what we think of as ourselves is often more of an idea we've built than the real deal.
What's really cool is how Jung saw the psyche.
Yeah.
It's like it has layers. He said underneath all that everyday stuff we think about, beyond their ego and the roles we play, there's a more real and authentic self down there.
Okay, so more about this ego thing. If the voice isn't our true self, then what is it? I know Jung tied it to the ego. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To Jung, the ego was like this essential organizer for the psyche. It's the part that develops a sense of I. It's what separates us from everything else. Like think of it as the conductor of our conscious experience. It helps us navigate everyday life, making choices, forming opinions, trying to make sense of everything. It's the part that's like, I like this or I believe that.
But this is what throws me. If the ego is so important, how can it also keep us from our true selves? It's like the thing that helps us function is also holding us back from something more real.
Yeah, you're picking up on something important there.
Yeah.
You see, the ego has to define us and protect our sense of self, but it does that based on what we've been through, what we've learned, even our old traumas. It filters everything through that past, which leads to that inner monologue, all the judgments, anxieties, expectations. And Jung's point was that this chatter, even though it feels so personal, it's not really our essence. It's more like the ego trying to control everything and keep a solid image of ourselves.
So when I'm up at night worrying about a million things, that's not the real me.
Not according to Jung. The first step is realizing that voice is just the ego doing its thing, not the whole you. It's freeing. You can start to step back and see those thoughts for what they are instead of getting lost in them.
Okay, so Jung also talked about the shadow. That sounds kind of mysterious and maybe a bit scary. How does that fit into this whole thing with the inner voice?
Well, it's all connected. The shadow to Jung is like all the parts of our personality that we don't want to deal with. The stuff we bury or pretend isn't there, good and bad qualities that we just can't accept or that society tells us are bad.
So the parts we don't want to admit are there.
Exactly. And a lot of times that inner voice becomes the voice of the shadow. It's full of the same judgments, criticisms, and fears that we haven't dealt with.
So can you give us an example of how that might work?
Sure. Think about that voice that says, you're not good enough. We've all heard that one. Now, Jung would say, look at where that comes from. Is it really true? Did you actually fail at something specific? Or is it just pressure from society? Or maybe something someone said when you were little that you never forgot? Usually that kind of harsh judgment comes from our own insecurities. It's the shadow talking the part of us we don't want to face.
Wow, that's a pretty strong link. So when I hear myself putting myself down, I might actually be getting a glimpse of my shadow?
That's the idea. Jung said we should pay attention to these thoughts, try to understand them without judging them. When we do that, the shadow loses its power, and our true self can come out. The self that isn't held back by all those limiting beliefs.
It sounds like a journey of self-discovery, and I know Jung had a word for that, individuation. So how does all this, the ego, the inner voice, the shadow, all connect to that bigger process?
When we zoom out, Jung saw individuation as the ultimate goal of how we grow psychologically. It's a lifelong journey of becoming a whole person by bringing all the parts of ourselves together. The conscious and the unconscious, the ego and the shadow, the masculine and feminine inside all of us. It's about moving past the fragmented self we show the world and embracing all of who we really are.
So that mental chatter, instead of trying to shut it up, could it actually help us on this journey of individuation?
Absolutely. Think about it this way. That inner voice is trying to tell us something. It's pointing out the things we need to work on, things we need to heal.
Like when it keeps bringing up past mistakes or anxieties, I definitely notice that. Usually not in a good way, though.
Here's how Jung would approach that. Don't get caught up in blaming yourself or worrying. Instead, really dig into those thoughts and feelings. What are they trying to tell you? What needs aren't being met? What issues haven't been resolved? If you explore the deeper message, You can learn from those experiences and use them to understand yourself better instead of just trying to bury them.
So listen with curiosity instead of judgment.
Exactly. When you do that, the ego's critical voice starts to quiet down, and you connect with a more compassionate part of yourself, your authentic self, the part that wants to grow and learn and become whole.
You've said before that a lot of suffering comes from identifying too much with the ego. Why is that?
Well, Jung saw that when we get totally caught up in that ego voice, we get trapped in its limited way of seeing things. And it's usually coming from a place of fear. That voice loves to create separation. It tells us what we can't do and makes us compare ourselves to everyone else. It builds this really narrow negative story, and we start to believe that's all we are.
It's like we're trapped listening to our own worst critic.
That's a good way to put it. But there's a way out. We can find freedom when we learn to observe those thoughts without getting caught up in them. We start to realize we are not our thoughts. We are the space where those thoughts come and go.
That's deep. If I'm not my thoughts, then they don't have to control me.
Exactly. Imagine you make a mistake.
Yeah.
Right away, your inner voice might jump in and say, "You're such a failure. You should have known better." That's the ego trying to protect itself from looking bad. But if you can step back and just notice that self-criticism without believing it, you start to take away its power. You can see things more clearly.
But how do you actually do that? It's easy to say observe your thoughts, but when they're really strong, it feels impossible.
It takes practice, and it takes courage to face those darker parts of ourselves that the ego tries to hide. But even little moments of awareness can change how you relate to that inner voice. It's like gently shifting your attention. You notice the thought, you acknowledge it, and then you choose not to get swept away by it.
You've also used this metaphor of a journey to the underworld. That sounds intense, like really facing those uncomfortable parts. What's the point of going there?
It's a powerful image. It's about facing our shadows, the parts of ourselves we've disowned or ignored. Like those heroes in myths who had to go to the underworld to find a treasure. We can find something really valuable by exploring those hidden parts of ourselves. The treasure, in our case, is often a part of ourselves that we've lost or buried.
So it's not just about dealing with the bad stuff.
Right. The shadow isn't all bad. It's also full of potential. Hidden talents, things we've rejected because of fear or shame or what society tells us. By going into that underworld, we can reclaim those lost parts and become more whole and authentic.
Can you give us another example of how that inner voice might lead us to this underworld?
Sure. Think about someone who always hears that voice saying, "You're not creative." Maybe they had a bad experience trying to be creative, or someone told them they weren't the artistic type. That voice might sound like it's stating a fact, but it's really hiding a desire to be creative. It's part of their shadow that wants to come out. If they gently challenge that voice and try being creative, they might find a passion they never knew they had.
It's like the ego wants to keep this perfect picture of us, and the shadow holds everything that doesn't fit.
Exactly. And Jung said true wholeness comes from embracing all of those parts, even the ones that seem to contradict each other.
So the ego makes us feel separate, but Jung also talked about the collective unconscious that connects us all. How does quieting that inner voice help us tap into that?
Here's the thing. All that mental chatter that the ego creates keeps us focused on ourselves and our own little world. It makes us feel isolated, like we're the only ones going through these things. But when we start to quiet that noise, something deeper can come through. We become aware of the collective unconscious. It's this vast pool of shared human experiences and patterns that Jung said we all have access to.
It's like turning down the volume on our own personal radio station so we can hear the bigger symphony.
That's a great way to put it. When we quiet the ego's demands and judgments, we can hear the wisdom and feel the connection that's always there in the collective unconscious.
And does that change the inner voice itself when we connect to that?
A lot of times it does. The voice might become less critical, less reactive, more intuitive, like it's getting guidance from somewhere bigger. It might even quiet down a lot, so it's more like a whisper when it does speak. And when we realize we're connected to this deeper level of consciousness, those fears and limitations that the ego throws at us start to lose their power. We feel more free and open to possibility.
So it's about finding balance, right? Because the ego does have a purpose in helping us live our lives. How do we balance the ego with this deeper, more authentic self?
Jung was clear that it's not about getting rid of the ego. We can't do that, and we wouldn't want to. It's necessary. The goal is to integrate it with the self. It's about having a healthy relationship with the ego. We recognize what it does, but we don't let its anxieties and limits control us. This means becoming more self-aware, seeing our ego's patterns, and choosing to act in ways that are aligned with our deeper values and insights.
So being aware of when the ego is being helpful and when it's holding us back.
Exactly. Like take insecurity. The ego might turn that into harsh self-criticism. But if we can look at that insecurity with compassion, we might realize it's showing us something we want to grow in or connect with. Instead of fighting the feeling, we can understand what it's trying to tell us and use it to move forward without letting it affect our self-worth.
You mentioned acts of conscious reflection as a way to become more aware. Can you give us some practical examples of how to do that in our daily lives?
One powerful practice is to just stop and pay attention to your thoughts and feelings. You can ask yourself, what am I thinking about right now? How am I feeling? And then just try to observe those things without judgment, like you're just watching them go by.
So just notice what's there without getting caught up in the story.
Exactly. Another good technique is to focus on a thought or belief that keeps bothering you. Like if you often think, I'm not capable, try to question that thought. Where is it coming from? What evidence is there to support it? What evidence goes against it? Asking those questions creates some space between you and the thought so it has less power over you.
It's like shining a light on those automatic thoughts.
That's it. And as you become more aware of them, you can choose how you respond instead of just reacting automatically.
And the unconscious, that huge part of our inner world, how does that communicate with us? And how can we get better at listening to what it's trying to say?
The unconscious speaks to us in lots of ways, often through symbols, images, and feelings that bypass our logical mind. Dreams, for example, are a main way the unconscious expresses itself. They give us these metaphors that can tell us a lot about what's going on inside. If we pay attention to the themes, emotions, and symbols in our dreams, we can get clues about the things driving our thoughts and actions.
So that weird dream I had last night could be connected to the anxiety I've been feeling.
It's definitely possible. Jung said we should analyze our dreams to understand what the unconscious is trying to tell us about imbalances in our psyche. Keeping a dream journal and thinking about what the images might mean can be really helpful for understanding ourselves. Besides dreams, the unconscious can also communicate through synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that don't seem to make logical sense, and even through sudden insights or intuitions that just pop up.
So if we pay attention to these less obvious signs, we can understand ourselves better beyond just the constant chatter in our heads.
You got it. It's about learning to listen in a more receptive, intuitive way to the wisdom inside us beyond the ego's chatter.
And by understanding these deeper parts of ourselves, we not only free ourselves from the ego's limits, but we also tap into that collective unconscious. And that can give us a sense of purpose and connection.
Exactly. Jung believed that by working with the unconscious and integrating what we find there, we become more whole and authentic. And that leads to a sense of meaning and belonging that goes beyond our individual worries.
This journey of self-understanding sounds like it can change how we see ourselves in the world. It's not something that happens overnight, is it?
No, the journey of self-discovery and individuation is a lifelong thing. It takes patience and persistence and a willingness to keep exploring who we are.
But it sounds worth it. More inner peace, more genuine relationships, a life with purpose. You mentioned journaling. Are there other things we can do in our everyday lives to work with these ideas?
Being creative is a great way to connect with the unconscious. Writing, painting, music, anything that lets those parts of ourselves come out that we might not be able to access through our logical minds. Spending time in nature is also really good. It helps quiet the mind and makes us feel connected to something bigger than ourselves. And things like meditation and mindfulness can help us create that inner stillness so we can see our thoughts and emotions more clearly without getting caught up in them.
So it's about actively making space for that deeper connection and self-awareness.
That's it. It's about making a commitment to the journey of self-discovery.
And it sounds like integrating these Jungian principles changes not just how we feel inside, but also how we interact with the world, how we make decisions, how we deal with challenges.
Absolutely. When we're more self-aware and authentic, our relationships become more genuine. Our choices are more in line with what we really value. And we can face those tough times with more resilience and wisdom.
You mentioned archetypes as these universal patterns. How can we become more aware of the archetypes that are at work in our own lives?
Pay attention to themes and patterns that keep coming up. In your dreams, in your experiences, even in myths and stories. Those can give you clues about the archetypes that are active in your psyche. For example, if you keep finding yourself in situations where you have to rescue or protect people, The hero archetype might be strong in you. If you're always searching for wisdom and understanding, the sage archetype might be at play. Recognizing these archetypal energies can help us understand ourselves better and see our life's journey in a new way.
And dreams can be a direct way for the unconscious to communicate these archetypes to us.
Definitely. Dreams are full of archetypal figures and symbols that represent basic human experiences. Like if you dream of a wise old man or woman, that might be your own inner wisdom trying to come through. Thinking about those images and how they make you feel can give you really deep insights into yourself.
Self-acceptance feels so important, especially with that inner voice always judging us. How does Jung's work help us accept ourselves more?
Accepting all parts of ourselves, even the shadow, is a big part of Jung's idea of integrating the psyche. He knew we can't be whole if we only accept the good parts and reject the bad. True wholeness means acknowledging, understanding, and integrating everything about ourselves with compassion.
So it's not about being perfect, but about becoming fully ourselves, even with our flaws.
Exactly. It's about realizing that those parts we judge or try to hide actually have something to teach us. They can help us grow. When we accept them, we free up all that energy we were using to suppress them, and we can move towards a more integrated, authentic self.
And as we understand and accept ourselves more, it sounds like our relationships get better too.
That's right. When we feel secure and accepting of ourselves, we don't need to project our insecurities onto others or constantly seek approval. Our interactions become more genuine based on real connection and respect instead of ego-driven needs and defenses. That leads to deeper, more fulfilling relationships.
So by becoming more ourselves, we create better relationships.
You got it. When we're comfortable with who we are, we allow others to be themselves too. That creates space for honest, authentic connection.
And finally, learning to trust those synchronicities and go with the flow of life. It sounds like letting go and trusting something bigger than ourselves.
It is. It's about trusting the wisdom of the unconscious and the way everything is connected. We let go of the need to control everything and open ourselves to the possibilities that come our way. It doesn't mean we stop making conscious efforts, but we learn to balance our will with surrender to how things are unfolding.
It sounds like a lifelong journey with lots of opportunities to learn and grow. Thank you so much for sharing these fascinating ideas with us.
It's been my pleasure. Remember, every step you take towards understanding yourself is a step towards living a more authentic and fulfilling life.
If something really resonated with you today, please share it with someone. You might reach someone who's struggling with their inner critic or feeling lost in their own thoughts. This could give them a new perspective and some hope. Sharing this could be a real gift.
We'd also love to hear your own experiences. Leave a comment and tell us about your inner narrator. What insights have you had? What practices do you use to become more aware of its influence? Your thoughts might really help and inspire other listeners.
Definitely. And if you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss our future deep dives into ideas and practices that can help you connect with your true self and live with more purpose.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of exploration. If you've listened this far, it means you're curious and you want to understand. And this is just the beginning. Take these ideas, think about them, share them, and let's keep learning and growing together.
Share, reflect, interact, and transform the world one inner voice at a time.